In today's video, I'd like to show you my new watercolor sketchbook. I started this sketchbook in 2022 and I finished it now in 2024, but there were long breaks in between some of the pages. I was not really present on YouTube all that much during the past 2 years and my painting style has evolved a lot. This particular sketchbook has been sent to me by Koval Sketchbook. This is not a sponsored video, but I got the sketchbook for free to try out. The sketchbook was custom made and I was supposed to choose my own color for the cover as well as the paper. I chose Founder's Waterford paper. Let's start with the tour. This was the very first painting and it was a self-portrait. So this painting did not turn out very well. I just painted way too many watercolor layers. It is heavy, it just doesn't have the freshness that a watercolor painting is supposed to have. The second page is also somewhere on my Patreon. I was gonna paint a portrait and just experiment a little bit with the stylization, and I think I was gonna use some of the beautiful granulating and duochromatic paints that I have. Today I do not have much appreciation for this particular painting. This one I do like. I came upon the reference photo of a friend of mine who is a photographer and she allowed me to use some of her photos as reference for painting. I'm gonna put a link to her Instagram down below. I remember I was kind of blocked back then, but this turned out well. I have the entire process on my Patreon. This painting was also based on her photo, but that didn't turn out very well. I think I stylized way too heavily. I don't like how the colors turned out. The original photo, it had this dreamy atmosphere which the painting totally don't have. The next piece was a little bit better. The reference photo was off of Pinterest. This is not even a portrait per se, it was more of a like surreal composition and I wanted to throw some paint, experiment with texture, so I used some salt. This here, I think I did a good job because I just love these textures. This process can be found also on my Patreon. Like most of these can be found on my Patreon, this one also. In this painting I wanted to focus on darker skin tones, which are probably the hardest to execute in watercolor. While I don't think that was the worst portrait, I did not achieve quite the depth that I was hoping for. This is still what I'm trying to figure out and get more comfortable with, the darker skin tones, in particular with watercolor, which can be very troublesome. The white flowers I like, the background is a mess. This page, I don't know, this is a wasted page because I did not paint anything on the actual sketchbook paper. I just filled it with what was happening at that time. I attended a masterclass with Edis Korea in Prague that just completely changed the way I paint portraits. It helped me to simplify my process a lot. Last day of the workshop was a plein air. So we were having lunch in a restaurant, the entire group, and he was painting some sketches. So I was sitting across him, so I painted his portrait. And this guy was one of the references that we were supposed to do during the workshop. I wanted to attempt the demo before he actually explained it, and this was my result. Like, it was very quick sketch. The live workshops are a really great idea. I don't think I did so bad as a self-taught person. For nearly a decade I never attended live workshop, mostly because when I started to paint in my area there were no like live workshops happening, especially not ones with such master like he is. I'm gonna put a link to his work down below in case that you don't know him, because you should definitely check him out. He's like a king of a watercolor portrait. After I came home from live workshop I was super motivated to paint. I took my own reference of a girl that was traveling in a train with us. This looks a little bit different than my portraits before. That summer we also had another masterclass with wonderful watercolor artists from India, Amit Kapoor and Megha Kapoor, his wife. Amit, he paints a lot of landscapes, which is not really my thing. I did attend the workshop and I did my best, but I hate to paint landscapes. That's not my thing. But she, Megha, paints beautiful flowers. So that summer I painted much more flowers inspired by her. I think this was pre-workshop, but there were some other studies that I did afterwards. These were very quick watercolor studies with just 2 paints. Then I attempted some peonies. This one I never finished and I do not want to. It was a nightmare. And this one I did wet in wet. Even though it looks a bit unfinished, it's not so bad. This is another portrait, because it's probably a combination of my old style and my new style. I really enjoyed the way I did the jacket, and I'm trying to learn how to work with lost edges a bit more. I went a little bit heavier on the face itself, but still I do like this portrait quite a lot. More flower studies. This was probably 10 to 15 minutes study of the roses that I had in my studio, as well as some other flowers that were in my studio. This looks unfinished, and it is, but I still liked that look. I was trying to learn how to do a sketch of something very quickly, just trying to figure out how many brush strokes you do actually have to make for people to recognize what type of flower it is. Next painting was also a portrait. I tried to kind of follow the style that I learned on the This Is workshop, trying to do the afro hair, which was so much fun. I tried to also play a little bit with the background and the whole stylization. I just decided to do that across the whole page, and I don't regret that decision. This next demo, I don't really know what was this inspiration behind it, but to this day I'm using this in my beginner watercolor class. This demo helps me explain all of the basic watercolor techniques to somebody who's just trying to learn the technique. I have the entire process on my Patreon. I love this motif because it has striking color combination, which is indigo or indigo paints gray plus orange. I would paint the fishes like this one and the water reflections all day long. It's just one of those motifs that I really enjoy painting repeatedly. Okay, next one. I remember that during this time I was on a roll. Like, I really enjoyed portrait painting. Even though I was not present on YouTube, I produced a lot of paintings for Patreon. I tried to experiment with portraits a bit more, make them a little bit more loose. I used to paint a lot of young women. Since this time I tried to focus more on the faces that show a little bit of age. Just try to find the differences in different faces. And I absolutely love the photo of the elderly woman with a hat that was filled with flowers and colors. It was beautiful. Like, I wanted to paint it instantly. I added these splashes and lots more colors to the actual portrait. I think that I did a good job with this particular painting. I like it very much. I liked it much more than how people received it on social media. In this next page we've got 3 faces that I painted mostly for Patreon, and I tried to pick 3 different types, different angles, and just like practice technique. After I painted the faces, I did a very experimental background, insanely dark and vivid. It looks like a flag. I don't hate it. People told me that it looked better with the white background, but I just like the way it turned out. Portraits are not flawless by far. They have so many mistakes. Some of them fall a little bit flat, and I don't like how the skin tones turned out in this one. This one I liked the most because that face was just so interesting. This was probably the most painful process that I've done in this sketchbook. It took me so long. It took more than 5 hours because it's just so much stuff in this painting. Reference photo that I had, I found it on Pinterest and I screenshot the photo, and then I printed it out and I just had it lying around the studio for 2 years. I was trying to search the original source of that photo after I published this tutorial and I could not find it. I had the opportunity to try out how to paint fabric, how to fold fabric. I was not really happy with how the face itself turned out, but I was really happy with the overall look of this piece. When I finished this painting, I never ever wanted to paint again because I was so exhausted. I do not have endurance for longer pieces. I'm more of a type of person who wants to sit down, paint in one session, and then move on with my life and do something else. Another one I did on both pages. In this painting, I tried to face one of the worst nightmares that I have about portraiture, and that is teeth. They're insanely hard, even to draw, then paint, that's even worse. I was lucky because Idis, during his workshops, he explained that very well, how to go about teeth, so that helped me a lot. And I think for the first time I accepted to take the challenge and do an angle that is a nightmare for an artist, which this face definitely was. These are mixed references. Pattern of the clothing that was made up by me, entire face and the pose, that was the reference that I found on Pinterest, and I used my own hands to take the reference. I like this painting, like this is one of my favorites. I see so many faults in that face, but I was so happy that I did it. This is another double page with 3 faces. I like the format of these. Also decided to do it again, just this time use different type of faces, a little bit different color palette. So I picked these 3 people. What I like about this is the coloring. Some faces like this one fall a little bit flat. I had the most fun with these type of portraits is when they are quick and loose. So that was a nurturing sketchbook session for me. Next page, inspiration came again from Pinterest. While I like the background, the hair, and even the face a little bit, I totally mishandled the hand. It looks horrible. This year is something that I'm specifically working on are the hands, the painting and drawing of the hands. But this is one of my more favorite pieces in the sketchbook. This is just something that I did to try and release the art block that I was having, and these are actually recent. After this painting I got stuck for half a year. For this sketch I used some white gouache. I don't hate it, but it's a little bit overworked. This painting is not good. The position of the hand looks awkward. I fell in love with the reference photo that I found, I think on Pinterest again. When I look at them, I can feel the awkwardness and the art block that I was experiencing, but Sketchbook is something that can tolerate all of these moods of yours. Another sketch is from my second workshop with Idis that was this year in February in Vienna. This was the 3rd day of workshop. He was gonna show us the figure and a very even more freestyle way of painting it. I loved this particular demo. In 3 days it is unbelievable what a great teacher can show you and can teach you and how he can move you forward in your own artistic journey. There's also a pitfall of attending master classes is that every master, they have their own specific style. Once you experience it and you see the paintings look so great in that way that he paints, sometimes then afterwards you don't even notice that your paintings start to look like theirs. What I'm trying to work on is to take some of the most universal technical aspects and then make the technique my own. I adopted some of the color mixes. That is one aspect that I think is more universal, and I try to lose a little bit of his style and try to find my own so that my watercolor paintings look like mine. That is just the only one disadvantage and pitfall of attending a masterclass. Everything else gives you so much value. This is the last page of my sketchbook that I finished today after a long time, because today is October and this sketch was done in February. I was completely blocked this year. It is again self-portrait from actually the same reference that I used on my first page. I wanted to see if my technique has developed somewhere and how has it developed, but painting myself was one of the hardest things. It comes with a full emotional package that I did not even expect. It was super hard for me. Turned out not so great. I don't like any of these paintings and I'm not gonna try again. So let me know in the comments which one of these sketches were your favorite. Let me know how you are handling your own sketchbooks and I will see you shortly. Bye!